The Centurion Project. Written by the 8th Day of Night. Chapter 27. The Royal Canterlot Wedding. Section 2, Part 2.
You will pay for that in blood, human.
Promises, promises.
Stupid, stupid, stupid!
Luna bellowed as she raced through the tunnels. She had already dropped off the maid at the safe room, leaving her with a password that only she and Night Flash knew. Said Pegasus was keeping pace behind her, hot on her tail as she led him through the maze of sewers that would lead them outside. Luna knew she should have forced Elias into the sewers first, but with her magic largely stored away, the human was physically stronger than she was. He had more than proven it by shoving her. And while the motion had hurt her pride, it had also hurt her heart. He had never raised his hand against her, but now things had become very serious, and another Elias had appeared. That fury she had seen on his face as he annihilated the changelings was vaguely reminiscent of the figure she had seen in his dreams, yet he had come out of it, showing mercy. Luna would thank Bookbinder and Night Flash for that later. They were the source of that control after all. The effort to temper the human's fiery anger seemed successful, at least partially. Maybe Celestia's plan would work. Maybe. Luna stumbled as she tried to rocket around the corner, and she was forced to stop to catch her breath. Her normal magical endurance was gone, and she had not run as a normal pony for years. She felt shame as Night Flash stopped beside her, the Pegasus showing no sign of exertion. "How far are we, Princess?" he asked, his voice low with barely concealed anger. Luna felt sympathy for the Pegasus. She would have felt the same guilt if she had been a literal hoofstep away from helping Elias. The fact that brave, strong, absolute moron of a human had sealed the entrance right in front of Night Flash's face made the Pegasus both angry and terrified. Despite the brave face he put on, they both knew the human had suffered grievous wounds already, and after days of brutal guard shifts, Elias was likely already reaching his limits. An adrenaline rush would only take some ponies so far, and the human had practically collapsed after the last fight. She could only worry at the thought of how he was faring now.
Not far,
Luna answered between pants.
You will need to fly back to the gardens, alone. Assist Guardsman Bright and hide him away. I shall remain outside the exit so that you may bring him back here.
Night Flash nodded. "I'll drag him back unconscious if I have to," he growled softly. She nodded breathlessly. She strained, taking a big gulp of air, then set off again. As they continued their run, Luna prayed desperately that the things were going well for her human guard. Things were not going well for Elias. He had only managed to land one more solid hit against the changeling, cut off one of the changeling's wings. He had paid for that with a cut across his abdomen, as well as a stab into his calf. His armor seemed to crumble away from the black magic of that axe, and with another black cut on his body, Elias was beginning to feel faint. His vision started blurring as his body screamed for his rest. His reactions were slowing down, and his chest heaved for more oxygen to keep his limbs swinging. Sweat pooled with the blood that dripped to the ground, and the air was rank with the smell of salt and iron. As Elias smacked the changeling's axe out of the line, he couldn't help but to glance at all the changelings surrounding them. Though they were staring at him like it was a piece of meat on their dinner plate, they also seemed impressed that he was still standing. Elias punched the armored changeling in the muzzle, paying for it with a nick across his neck. Like any audience, the changelings began to cheer as the blades rang against each other, jeering as the armored changeling when he was forced back. More than once the changeling snarled at them, losing focus long enough for Elias to inflict one minor wound or another. Their dance ebbed and flowed, speeding up and slowing down as the fighters burned through their energy like a forest fire through a lumber mill. Time slowed down for Elias as he spotted an opening. The changeling was constantly rotating between his axe and sword, with each blade descending seconds after another. If he could lock down one blade for long enough, he could get in a killing blow against the changeling's throat. Hopefully that would startle the rest in the fleeing, or at least stun them long enough for Elias to go to work. He set his feet, trying to avoid slipping in blood as he charged forward. What he didn't take into account was changeling magic. The changeling grinned at Elias, and his horn flashed as the bolt of energy leaped out to meet the human's charge. Elias was forced to catch the magic on his shield, and with the wound in his side, he had to twist awkwardly to parry the subsequent sword swing at his neck. As he twisted, his scutum lowered, just enough for the axe to cut up the side of his face. Elias screamed in pain as his left eye shut. His right eye soon followed as the changeling sword tore away his helmet, severing the strap as it cut from right to left across his face. Elias fell to his back as a bolt of energy ripped through his chest. As blood streamed down his face, Elias kept enough consciousness to raise his scutum to block an incoming attack. He felt the changeling's axe stick into the wood, but with his focus shattered, the bug was easily able to rip away the shield. And with no protection other than blind swinging a feather, the changeling buried its sword into his thigh. As Elias howled in agony, he realized he could still see colors. He wasn't fully blind, which was a positive, but his face had already swollen to the point that he was temporarily without sight, as if it mattered. The changeling cackled madly as it slowly twirled the sword on Elias's leg, ripping holes in the flesh as it taunted him.
An admirable fight, human,
it said. Elias could feel the heat from its breath as it leaned close, blocking what little sight he could see.
I shall ask my queen to let me bear a few of the scars you have given me. If nothing else, you have provided her with some measure of entertainment, and you have proven that nothing can stop the changelings. Die now, and know that your princess will soon lick the hooves of Queen Chrysalis as docile brood mares.
Elias let Feather fall from his grip, and though the motion caused him immeasurable pain, he reached out, grabbing the changeling's armor as he slammed his forehead into the creature's muzzle. It yelped in pain, and in its panic, it tore the sword from his thigh. Elias crowded again as his hand dropped to the wound, clutching at it to stem the tide of blood flowing forth. The changeling snarled at him, then laughed loudly.
Well played, human, it called, its tone mocking. Accepting death is for the weak, and you have proven that you deserve more. Let us make it last, together.
A hoof slammed into Elias' cheek, and he flopped to his side, his tongue rolling in his mouth limply as he struggled to stay awake. Everything hurt so much. Elias felt a warm feeling in his leg, followed by another punch into his jaw as the changeling cackled. It mocked.
You aren't allowed to bleed to death just yet, human. I must show the hive how to take you apart, should we ever encounter another of your kind.
Elias recoiled in disgust as he felt a slimy tongue on his right cheek.
Oh, perhaps I should convert you. Your savagery will serve the hive well, and I think breaking your will would be the most enjoyable. Perhaps I turn you into a mere drone, so that you can help the conquest of Equestria. Or, even better, turn you into a broodmare. How will that strength of yours last as you are used time and again to produce new warriors for the hive?
Elias weakly attempted to headbutt the changeling again, but the creature merely laughed as it pulled back. It then slammed its forehead into his own, jarring Elias as he struggled to maintain consciousness.
That's right, human. Fight! Fight to survive! That instinct will serve us well.
Elias could feel the air crackle with energy, and the changeling released him to fall onto his back as it charged the spell. He heard a multitude of footsteps as the rest of the changelings closed in.
Come, brothers, let us bring another into the hive. We shall welcome this human as one of our own, and he shall serve the queen well.
He didn't know what that meant, but he wasn't going to wait to find out. Elias felt the hilt of feather under his fingertips. He counted to 3, waiting until the energy felt like it had reached its zenith. Then, using the last wind he had left in his broken body, he lurched up, stabbing the blade through the changeling's chest. The power dissipated over his head, and the other changeling shrieked in horror. Elias felt his hatred rise once more, and his left fist rose, pounding the changeling blindly in the jaw.
You thought I would just lay down and die?
Elias growled. He shouted with rage as he lurched up, using his weight to drag the changeling to the ground. It gasped wetly in his grasp, but he didn't let it fight back. Instead, he let Feather go, using both fists to pound the changeling's face, using the differences in colors to remain on target. The shrieks continued as a buzzing rose in the air. Fresh rage gave him a new energy, and his fist rose like hammers, pounding down on the anvil that was the changeling's face. His knuckles split as he hit the changeling's helmet. Elias roared in pain, ripping the armor free, before using it to continue bludgeoning the bug before him. He felt the strange material bend under the force of his blows, and though he felt a blade bite into his back, he ignored it as the changelings around him shrieked in alarm. A strange sensation passed over Elias, causing him to momentarily hesitate. The next punch quickly fell, however, and Elias continued beating away at the changeling before him. Only when his fist entered the goo of the changeling's brain did he stop. He sat back on his heels and stared blindly at the sky. He didn't know what happened, but the rest of the changelings were gone, the air silent of their buzzing and chattering. Elias felt around, clasping Feather's hilt as he dragged the blade across the wet stones to his side. Swallowing roughly, he then attempted to stand. The wound in his leg, while partially healed by the armored changeling, still wept blood, and Elias could feel it draining his energy as he limped around, trying to stumble into his scutum. Even if he had scared off the changelings nearby, more would come. He made too easy a target. Elias was ultimately fine with that. It meant they would be watching him, attacking him rather than some pony else. He felt his sandal toe kick his shield just as he realized that he had said some pony instead of someone. If he could move his face, Elias imagined he would have laughed. As it was, his mouth was twisted shut by the swelling of his cheek. A low growl escaped, but that was all. Hooking his feet through the straps of his scutum, Elias limped in the direction he remembered the statue being. His sword arm swung blindly, and when Feather touched stone, he reached out with his left hand, eventually finding the statue. He dragged himself to rest on it, sighing as his body screamed a million different signals, most of them about the damage he had taken. Elias ignored all of them as he focused on breathing and listening. The only sound he could hear was the wind whispering through the trees. So he leaned back, his bare head touching the legs of the statue as he waited, Feather across his lap. Luna cursed her current frailty, cursed the changelings, and most of all cursed Elias for being the brave idiot he was. She had misremembered the routes to the exit, and after 2 backtracking attempts, she and Nightflash were only just getting to the entrance. She had made a note to leave markers in the tunnels that she and she alone would understand. Perhaps hieroglyphics, that would suffice. Better than stumbling around blindly like some kind of buffoon. As she gulped in air, she pointed wordlessly to the door that led to the side of Canterlot Mountain. Nightflash pushed past her, making ready to charge the door, when a pulse of magic passed over them in the form of a massive bubble spell. Luna blinked, looking in direction from the castle. Had Celestia wasted their effort? Luna tasted the magic, then confirmed. No, it originated from 2 ponies, not 1. Luna scowled as she detected Cadence's magic, but quickly identified that it didn't originate from the Alicorn's personal magic stores, but rather her ambient ones. It was most strange, but Luna had no doubt that their efforts over the past few months were not for naught, or so she hoped. Luna looked for Nightflash, who was frowning at her confusion.
Go to the castle, see what has happened,
Luna said.
I shall find Godsman Bright.
Nightflash hesitated. But I'm faster, Princess. What if Red is hurt? What if he needs help? Luna walked to the door, putting in a simple combination to unlock it.
I suspect the changelings have been evicted from Canterlot, and Godsman Bright will need medical attention. You are faster. That is why you shall check the situation in the castle, find a medical team, and bring them to the garden immediately. Am I clear, God's Pony Flash?
Nightflash nodded, and he took off like an arrow as soon as the door opened wide enough for him to squeeze through. Luna followed as best as her exhausted body was able, running up the narrow stairs that were cleverly hidden with invisibility runes placed centuries ago. They had originally been designed for smuggling wine into the castle by Celestia during a prohibitionary period, but Luna had easily repurposed them for her own devices, and with a few stone shifting spells, she was more than sure even her sister would have a difficult time in the sewers. As she cleared another flight of stairs, Luna's only regret was not putting in an elevator. It took Luna far longer than she would have liked, and she felt very much not like a princess. But once she reached the top of the stairs, she sprinted towards the gardens, weaving between the trees as she raced for the sealed entrance. Throughout the run, she encountered nobody, pony or changeling. She hoped that was a good sign, rather than the one of the potential multitudes of negative ones. If she didn't have to conserve her magic, Luna would have been sending off her 100 letters a minute to find out the situation, to save lives. But now, she would just have to do her best to save one. The clearing was devastated, and Luna couldn't suppress a gasp as she looked upon it. Blood and changeling goo coated the ground. A body with a smashed-in head twitched among a particularly nasty pool of gore, and Luna did her best to ignore the corpse as she looked around for Elias. As still as he was, Luna missed the human the first time. But when she saw him, she could only stare in horror. The human was covered from head to toe in gore, and it was clear that a lot of it was his own. His face had been cut apart, and a deep wound seeped at key points in his body, including a nasty wound across his belly. The changeling horn still rested in his hip, and a fresh wound seeped from his previously broken leg. Elias sat on the pedestal of the statue, blindly staring forward, unmoving and pale as he waited with a chilling stillness. His sword sat in his blood-soaked hands, shining in spite of the gore that decorated it. Luna took a few cautious steps forward towards the human, trying to see if he was still breathing. As her footsteps clattered on the stone, Elias had shot in her direction, seeking her out through hearing alone.
"Who's there?"
he asked with a grumbling croak. Luna noted a nasty gash on his throat, and as it seeped blood, she realized that she had no way to help him. His marred face twitched, and the timbre of his voice raised as his torso turned in her direction.
"I said, who's there?"
Elias said loudly, his voice slurring as he spoke. Luna heard fear in that voice, though it was slight. She put on her best smile, even though she knew he couldn't see it, and she spoke softly.
It is I, Guardsman. It is Princess Luna.
Instead of comforting the human, her words seemed to agitate him. Elias's grip on his gladius tightened as he tried to rise to his feet. Instead of putting up a staunch defense, Elias collapsed with a groan, revealing a large puddle of blood that had stained the pedestal where he had been sitting. Luna rushed forward, catching his head in her wings as he flopped to the ground. His sightless, swollen face stared at her.
Can't trust you,"
he spat out.
"Could be one of them. Scarlet was."
He seemed to wither under the admission, but Luna couldn't focus on that right now. She needed to keep him alive. Blood trickled down his chin, and Luna cast about desperately for even a simple bandage. She gently grabbed his hand, stopping it from gripping the gladius he was searching for. She guided his bloody fingers to her chest and stroked his arm softly, taking care not to run her hoof over any of the bite marks that ran up and down his limb.
I am real, Elias,
Luna said softly.
And I am here for you.
The human shivered in her grasp, and she quickly got over her disgust for the gore painting the human as she pressed herself against his chest, covering his body with her wings. She laid her head near his neck, pressing her ear against his skin to feel for her pulse. His heart was beating a mile a minute, strange for a million different reasons, but it was still going strong. Luna smiled at the sound.
You used my name,"
Elias said softly. The tension drained from his body.
You're real, princess. None of the changelings knew my name."
Luna nodded silently, continuing to stroke the human as she prayed for Nightflash to hurry. Any pony would suffice, so long as they had bandages. With the amount of red decorating the dirt, it was a miracle that Elias was awake, let alone coherent enough to make rational justifications. More and more blood seeped forth, and Luna had no way to stop it. It nearly brought a tear to her eye as she thought of letting the human die to preserve her magic stores. But she had to be a princess first, and he was a guard after all. He knew that death was a real possibility. Luna stifled her emotions as she continued to keep the human warm. "Princess?" a voice called through the trees. "Princess, where are you?"
Here,
she called in response. She ran a hoof through Elias's hair, smiling at the human.
Elias, are you still awake?
She asked hopefully. He grunted in response and his fingers curled slightly in her chest fur, causing Luna to giggle softly as Bloody Bandage and a fresh team of royal guards sprinted into the clearing, escorted by a wild-looking Nightflash. He let up a yelp as he spotted Elias, and he attempted to run to the human side, only to be stopped by two of the royal guards. He growled at them, his wing blades flashing brilliantly as he prepared to force his way past. But then he stopped when he saw a trio of healers shove even Luna out of the way as they set to work on the battered human. The Alicorn blinked in a stupor as she rose to her feet, but she didn't protest as the ponies quickly ripped away Elias's armor. The pair of unicorns cast healing spell after healing spell on the human, while the Pegasus set up a series of IV drips, stabbing needles into both of Elias's arms to fill him with desperately needed fluids. As they lifted him onto the stretcher, Luna moved the Nightflash aside, hugging him tightly with her wing. The Pegasus watched the royal guard swarm over the stretcher, lifting it into the air as they carried the human towards the infirmary. "Is he going to be all right, Princess?" Nightflash asked quietly. Luna nodded.
Of course he is, God's pony. That human has survived worse and recovered without issue. This is just another day in the office for him.
Nightflash looked at the destroyed changeling. It happened again, Princess. He lost control because of me. Luna sighed, feeling a deep tiredness.
Yes, he did, God's pony. I cannot help but to think of it in a positive light, however.
Nightflash looked at her with confusion in his eyes. How so? Luna smiled down at the pony and began to guide him away from the clearing, motioning subtly for the remaining royal guards to begin clearing the mess.
It just shows that he loves you very much, God's pony. He is willing to do anything to make sure you aren't hurt.
She shivered as she began to walk towards the hidden staircase. They would retrieve the maid first and see about getting Nightflash's injuries treated.
I shudder to think what would happen if Elias saw any pony hurt his dear mother.
Nightflash snorted. Yeah, if we thought that was bad, I don't think any pony wants to see what would happen if Bindy got hurt where Red could see. Though Luna could tell he was trying to make light of it, the thought clearly depressed the pony. He was likely worried sick about his mate, and the thought of Elias flying into a blistering rage again didn't help. Luna rubbed his withers softly, trying to be as comfortable as possible.
Fear not, God's pony. I have no doubts that God's pony bookbinder is fine.
She snorted.
If anything, she is probably single-handedly responsible for stopping the invasion, preserving scrolls with one half, while eradicating changelings with the other. All in the name of her baby boy.
That put a smile on Nightflash's face, and he chuckled as they walked. His smile quickly dissolved when he sighed loudly, shaking his head. Is this going to ruin everything, Princess? Nightflash asked. Is Red still going to want us? Luna stopped, turning the pony in her hoofs quickly as she locked eyes with him. She put her most serious expression on as she held his gaze, making sure every word was listened to carefully.
What he does or doesn't want is irrelevant, God's pony,
Luna said plainly.
Elias will need you, and he will need you as soon as possible. He will be physically mauled by this incident, and you and Bookbinder need to ignore it all. You must continue loving him as if nothing has happened. Nothing at all can change in your relationship. Am I clear?
Marred? Nightflash echoed. But healing magic doesn't leave any scars. Not big ones, at least. Luna shook him, trying to make him focus.
God's pony, listen to my words. Nothing can change. Elias will be scarred, and you must treat him the same. Am I clear? This is the single most important task I will ever give you as a god.
Nightflash blinked at her but nodded. All right, Princess, but I still don't get it. What's wrong with Red? What do you mean by marred? Luna sighed, rubbing her forehead as she released the Pegasus and resumed their march to retrieve the maid from her safe room. It had been in passing, but she had felt more than seen black magic in the clearing. Touches of black had even touched Elias's wounds. Even if her most optimistic thoughts were justified, the human was going to be in dire straits.
Tell me, God's pony, what do you know about changeling magic?
There we go. Before anything else, I'd like to shout out the second chapter release of Somnambulance. If you're interested in a comedy romance, I'd definitely check it out. It's written by Squall Windfeather, one of my Patreons and one of my best friends. I'll leave it in the description down below for you guys to check out, and I would appreciate it. What else I appreciate are my wonderful Patreons. Thank you, my Tier 1 Patreons, Squall Windfeather, Brain Flicker, Starlight Blaze, Dreamless Portal, Thine Tiny Equine, and Stewhex. My Tier 2 Patreons, Sword Brother and Mordred, Solus, HKH4 aka Texture, The Animated Ghost, and welcome back, Chase Lemaster, and in the Tier 2. I appreciate it so much, man, and I'm glad to have you back. Thank you so much for your support. And of course, a large thank you to Silent Titan. I appreciate your guys' support so much, and it means a ton to me. If you want other ways to support the video, well, your viewership is more than enough. However, leaving a like, of course commenting, and maybe even subscribing does help with the algorithm, and I appreciate it. That aside, however, this has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.